G'day guys. This is on vitamin D and the severity of the Omicron variant. So this is looking at some research that's come out of Israel. So let's just share the screen. So this is basically in Psychology Today. And this is an MD that's just covering this article. A striking link between vitamin D levels and Omicron. Low levels associated with the severity of Omicron and other variants. Surprise, surprise. I've been saying this right from the beginning. A low vitamin D level is surely a primary cause of severe C19, say some researchers. Results are equally relevant to the O variant as for previous strains, and likely those still to come. Wonderful. Vitamin D affects many organs in the immune system. We know that. Well, my subs do. A study is the first to examine existing vitamin levels in people before they contracted C19. We found it remarkable and striking. Yes, they were surprised. Yes, not us in the Carney community, so to speak. We like to be outdoorsy, out there enjoying ourselves and getting as much sun as we can. A recent study by Israeli scientists have found striking differences in chances of contracting severe C19 illness between individuals with sufficient levels of vitamin D prior to catching the virus than those who did not. Half the vitamin deficient people develop severe, life-threatening illness compared to fewer than 10% of those who had normal levels. What they mean by normal levels, let's just cut the chase, is insufficient, or I would even call mildly deficient. So even those who had mildly deficient levels still did better, because that's my classification. Their classification is just nonsense for rickets. Who gives a shit? Yeah, that's crap. Now let's move on. The study, so RDIs, guys, just ignore them. They're just bonkers. Those people that need to be, are completely and utterly criminally insane that came up with those RDIs of 1,000 IUs, and some of them even down to 600. I mean, give us a break. They are really trying to drive deficiency down for people, push them into the deficient so they could be very dependent on big pharma. We know the real reasons, The study is the first to examine existing vitamin D vitamin levels in people before they contracted C19. That's important because they were actually looking prospectively forward to see what are your levels, what are your outcomes. So it's nearly like a randomized control study because you've got a control, exactly where their starting point, and then what are their incidence amongst the different levels of vitamin D status. Very, very important. We found it remarkable and striking. They were excited by the results, said the lead author. We see the difference in the chances of becoming a severe patient when you are lacking vitamin D compared to when you're not. Got it? You got a poor vitamin D status, you're going to be a severe case. If you're super high levels like myself in the high normal range, and you've got Dalek level T lymphocytes, yes, we're talking about the ones that can take out anything, then you get negative results continuously. Remember that. Okay, the data came from 253 people who were admitted to hospital between April the 7th, 2020. It's not a big group, I do agree. And February the 4th, 2021. A period of time before the highly infectious Yes, the new one, the O variant appeared. Results, however, are equally relevant. The O variant, as for previous strains, says the study author. Vitamin D is largely synthesized naturally in human skin, requires direct exposure to sunlight, specifically UVB. Artificial light, no matter how bright, doesn't cut it. Given how the pandemic has kept many people primarily indoors, our masters told us to stay indoors for our own protection, setting us up for a big, downfall after. For over 2 years, it is easy to see how a considerable number of individuals might have fallen below the threshold for adequate vitamin levels, with conventionally is at least 20. This is what they think, 20 nanograms per milliliter of blood, which at that level times 2.5, which is 50 millimoles per liter, which I consider completely inadequate. You're not vitamin D, you're clinically, as far as I'm concerned, you're vitamin D deficient severely at that level. At even 30, I consider you deficient, let alone 20, and people are below that. Shocking. And they wonder why they're falling like left, right, and center. And even then, they still didn't imagine. Still, the flu pandemic of 89, 90 still took out more people. And still there was a healthier population and a more younger population and a smaller population in the UK. And those people are also, because, through the health system there, flu vaccines have been around for some time. But still, look at the numbers, the difference. So all that against, and the lower vitamin D levels nowadays, because people work indoors far more than they did 32 years ago. And then they're telling you that the current one is worse. I beg to differ, and I think most logical people would look at that data and the confounding variables of 32 years younger population, more outdoorsy, better vitamin D status back then compared to today, less slip, slap nonsense to basically guarantee you a deficiency, plus indoors. And still, the numbers were lower deaths from, yes, exactly. So that should tell you a lot about, the current nonsense and how nonsensical it is. And it doesn't surprise me that even insufficient levels of vitamin D are protective, let alone normal levels. You get a blip, you don't even register illness. If they encourage people just to take even the smallest amount of supplementation, you would have saved thousands and thousands of people. Who's the criminal? I'll leave that for you to ponder. I think we've talked about this before. We just have to be careful about the YouTubia censorship. Unfortunately, we can't speak the way we would like to speak. Anyway, new data, however, indicates that even this is too low. A minimum of 50 nanograms per milliliter, it should be an N there, is now advised. So that level, guys, 50 times 2.5 is 125 millimoles per litre. Got it? Which is the metric system that many countries like Australia uses and all that. So that's what they're talking about, these guys. They're actually saying, you want to basically really protect the population, you need to get to those levels. If you want to be therapeutic, then you need to get to 80, as I've talked about, turning off autoimmunity, by influencing certain genes and stuff like that. But for the general public that's relatively healthy, that's the sort of level you really need to have a strong robust immune system. Levels below is this. That's what it should be saying. Bloody, who actually edited this? Poor spelling. You know, this is sort of spelling that I sometimes make. You know, I mean, but I don't have an editor to look at my spelling. Levels below this are said to cause weak innate immunity response to common T lymphocytes, common that will cause post-operative infections. Diet plays much lesser role in the vitamin intake and maintenance. I beg to differ. You need cholesterol to synthesize basically vitamin D. It plays a very friggin' important role. Anyway, it is soluble in fat rather than water. Yes, we know that. And found in foods such as fresh fatty fish, mushrooms. That's the other one, the D2. That's useless. Egg yolks, full fat, obviously full fat yogurt, beef liver, and duck. Yes, nothing like a duck. According to Professor Robin Wright of Victoria, Australia, the quantity of vitamin D in food is quite small. Yes, we know that. That's why you need to get out in the sun and eat a steak, you know. Preferably naked, but, you know, it may cause a few issues with the local authorities if you do that, you know, in decent exposure. So do it within your home environment. Just need to warn some people. Some people just don't. You know, you've got to put the do not do this in public. For those people with inadequate sun exposure, yes, large parts of the population nowadays, if they're not indoors working all day long, on top of that, when they do go out for that small amount of time, they slap on so much of that poisonous crap on their skin so they don't get anything. Yes. I mean, why would you put any cream on when you're only going out at lunchtime to go and get, you know, probably a meal or something while you're at work? 15, 20 minutes. I mean, if you're fair skinned, you could get a good dose. But no. That could be dangerous. That could give you skin cancer. Oh, how awful. Yes, it's only in the modern world with junk food and all that, and junk fats that incorporate in our skin that really are easily oxidized and poor fat-soluble vitamins tend to overexpress matrix metalloproteinases in the skin and cause a lot of skin damage. And as that happens continuously, yes, that will cause the problem. But if you eat a species-appropriate diet, you're never going to get those problems. But we can't recommend that because the crackpots basically would be very upset if we promoted species-appropriate foods. Anyway, the only practical way to, yes, we enduring good levels is vitamin D3 supplements. Well, that's an option, especially in winter when there's something around. A low vitamin D level is surely a primary cause of severe C19. Anyway, throughout the lifespan, the vitamin regulation and metabolism of calcium, which is crucial in the development and maintenance of healthy bones, prevents rickets in children, osteoporosis in adults. The results, well, without methaquinone, without K2, not as good. It's a synergy. The latter results in brittle bones and correspondingly otherwise avoidable fractures. Yes, one thing that our dear Vagoons do know very much. And the goat, that one, he enjoys actually fractures when he gets out of the bathroom, you know. So yes, cholesterol is, you know, a bad word for him. Muscle and bone weakness also render individuals prone to falls. We know, you know. Can you imagine Garth Davis when he gets another 20 years, he'll be falling on, he'll need basically like a exoskeleton suit just to keep him up so he doesn't fall over, and fracture every single bone in his body. Yes, it's active metabolite, acts as a hormone, yes, we know. That targets the kidney and other organs, yes, we know, giving it a role in heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and immune cells. Yes, all that. It's wonderful stuff. This last is a complex topic beyond the scope of the column. Yes, we know. Anyway, research published in the Lancet and compiled before the emergence of C19 variants found that compared to dummy drugs, adequate vitamin D also reduced the risk of contracting other respiratory infections. We know, it's been known for bloody donkey's years. It's the reason why it was the first recommendation that I gave with my first video. Anybody can go and take a look at it. Look at my playlist. That was the first recommendation. Why? Because vitamin D is the only thing that has been shown to deal with respiratory infections for two reasons. One, it supports T lymphocytes, so stem cell production of T lymphocytes. Two, it regulates matrix metalloproteinase and collagen degrading enzymes in the lungs. So any potential damage can be sorted and prevented. It regulates macrophages, so you don't get a cytokine storm, which causes even more damage. Not the virus, but the actual after effects of bombarding like mad. Clean it up with T lymphocytes rather than actually with macrophage just exploding, cytokine grenades all over the lungs, So well known, any respiratory or coronaviruses are respiratory infectious vector. As a consequence, the best approach to protect your lungs from a respiratory infection are obviously vitamin D. So well known, all the mucosal barriers, vitamin D again. So it's things that I've been talking about for some time now. And, the other things help. Gargling helps, zinc helps, all the other things. But fundamentally, the two foundational pillars that I actually consider is vitamin D and taurine. And taurine because it can actually protect the T lymphocytes from senescence. So as they fight the pathogens coming in, they do sustain some damage. Well, when you've got taurine around, it can actually heal them. It can actually prevent them from going senescent, going old, damaged, becoming damaged. That means they can continue fighting for longer. Very important if you want to clear something out rapidly out of your system and prevent it from getting a foothold in your system and causing you illness. That is why the combo of a steak and the sun are so important. That's the other pillar, the taurine pillar, that is actually being missed in all these conversations. But anyway, that's for another day to be covered in. Now, yet Israeli researchers caution vitamin D was only one piece of the complex puzzle underlying the severity of C19. It alone doesn't constitute proof of cause, yet it does seem to serve as a useful marker to flag individuals who may go on to develop serious illness. And that's important. But remember, we're talking about people with very low levels. We're talking about people that have got 20 and 30 and all that. And these are the people that basically are surviving and not going into. It's the people 20 and below, a lot of them that are actually ending up succumbing to severe levels. Great policy by the government. Stay indoors, avoid the sun, like the plague. Make yourself more prone to having much lower vitamin D levels when the winter comes, so we can thin out the population, bring the numbers down. And then claim, look how bad it is. It's a lethal, it's a killer. We need to basically triple jab you, otherwise you won't survive. Yes, we've heard all the bullshit, pretty much. Okay, so this is the actual study. I'm not gonna read it because 253, that we're talking about in the beginning, so you guys can take a look at it yourselves. That one. There's another one. Prevents acute respiratory infections. Randomized control. So it's a meta-analysis of a whole lot of aggregated randomized control studies. So, but remember, you always have to interpret this. Remember, a lot of these, look at the levels. Protection associated with administration of 400 to 1,000 IUs. Some very low levels. This is why, even at those low levels, you're getting better than sort of background, placebo. But it's just too low. This is why when they say here that it's a complex puzzle, I call it a low dose, not a complex puzzle, but a low dose. That you can go out all your skin. That means if you're a tribal person, you go out in the sun, you can produce in a day anywhere between 10,000 and 20,000 IUs. Your body will determine how much it'll convert and how much it'll store and all that sort of stuff. But you can produce that amount if your body requires it. So it tells you something that basically the body can actually produce quite a bit. And, if it has cholesterol and it has the sun, these sort of levels are for rickets levels. This is a joke. This is a joke on the population, these levels, the RDIs. They're actually a joke as far as I'm concerned. And still, even that joke level is still getting better results than compared to many others. But it's still a joke. Okay, so let's just be clear. This is why they go, oh, there's no really strong statistical association or no significant, Why? Because basically people are doing levels which are pretty much deficient levels. Even out in the sun, you'd generate more than you would generate with supplementation of this level. It's a joke to say anything else. Autocrine vitamin D signaling, switching off inflammatory programs of Th1 cells. Molecular mechanisms governing orderly shutdown of retraction of CD4 type 1 helpers T cells. Response main poorly understood. Here we show the complement trigger contraction of Th1 response by indicating intrinsic expression of vitamin D, VIT-D receptor, the activation enzyme, permitting T cells to both activate and respond to vitamin D. Vitamin D then initiating the transition from pro-inflammatory interferon gamma Th1 cells to suppressive interleukin 10 cells. This process was primed by dynamic changes in the epigenetic landscape of CD4 T cells, generating super enhanced and recruiting several transcription factors, notably C-Jung, STAT3, and BAT2. These are all different components of the system, which together with D receptors shape the transcription response of VIT-D. Accordingly, VIT-D did not induce interleukin 10 expression in cells with dysfunction. So if there were part of it, because sometimes there are dysfunction in the system, so we don't see. So it's important you have a functional system for these things to work properly. And I'll just get down there. T cell patients with C19 were Th1 skewed and showed repression of genes downregulation by VIT-D. So if people basically had underlying, this system wasn't working very well from either lack of substrate, vitamin D deficiency, so either due to vitamin D or abnormal regulation of this system. So either one or the two. So if your immune system, because people that have got chronic inflammation, have got a lot of other comorbidities and problems like that. Some of these systems don't work as well in those people. This is what Sean Baker has been saying for some time. You guys need to clean up your act. You need to get on a species appropriate diet, clean up, lower the inflammation, get the body to work properly and regulate. So even this is why we're seeing that some people that are taking vitamin D supplementation and still are not able to regulate their immune system properly. And also, it's probably another reason a lot of their T cells are also have got a lot of senescence because they're not getting enough meat, not getting enough taurine to sort out the senescence. It's the reason why I said to you guys, do a 3-day fast, rebuild your T lymphocytes prior to any major exposure in that regard. So keep that in mind. So what we're noticing is when the system is actually working properly, what can happen is, I'm not going to go through this whole study because this is going to blow this video out far too much. But what this study is showing is that this process was primed by epigenetic remodeling. Because epigenetics, that means switching on and switching off things, very important. There was another part that I had to cover. That's right. Complete induces an autocrine T cell vitamin D shutdown program. So basically, when things are regulated properly, you go from inflammation to deal with the problem, and then you shut that system down. What happens is, in some people, especially with what we call long C19, or this sort of lack of ability to clear out foreign particles from the mRNA stuff. When you don't have a properly functioning immune system, that's when you start getting into problems and actually, bringing down that. And this is why we're seeing that long, on the other video that I actually showed, that long fatigue level, the long fatigue level, all these sort of people are really just suboptimal. They're really not recovering properly. And that's the reason, because of these derangements in the immune system. I say to people, get on a species appropriate diet, cut out the bloody sugar, cut out a lot of this sort of stuff, without going into all this detail. What you need to understand, keep it simple, cut out all the garbage, do a 3-day fast, rebuild your immune system, and get your vitamin D levels right sky high, and get your taurine in, and try and actually then sort out your system. Because that's the only way you're going to do this clearance, and you're going to eliminate these long C19 syndrome and also the mRNA long syndrome as well. You're not going to, you need a strong immune system. I can enough, but that's what you need to do. Sort of pull your head in, man up, woman up, and start basically sorting out your diet, sorting out your immune system if you're in this situation. Because there's a lot of people that basically are finding themselves with a number of these issues, unresolved issues with even the smell issue. There's actually research that actually shows that taurine helps with that as well. Doesn't surprise me. It's associated stuff, unfortunately, because nobody's done any clinical stuff, any randomized control study or clinical trials on this, but there's definitely associational research to show that. And there's also good research that a lot of these other conditions are actually improved with a better immune system. Again, vitamin D, it's a combination of vitamin D and a species appropriate diet. So when I talk about taurine, what I really mean is meat and seafood. That's what I'm talking about. So obviously supplementing a bit in these times is basically enhancing those things, because we've, you know, a lot of us, let's be honest, we haven't been clean through these last couple of years, and we still aren't completely clean. We live in a very hostile food environment, with fridges and supermarkets all around us, and we do tend to succumb to some of these addictions and you know, whispering, I need honey, you know, something like that. Well, that happened to Salad Boy, not to me, but definitely Salad Boy. With mine, it's, you know, it's sort of ice cream. With Bart, it's been basically cider. Yeah, we all have our indiscretions. Let's just be honest about it. And none of us are, you know, are completely immune to falling off the wagon in that regard. But it does have consequences. That's the reality. It does have consequences, guys. You really need to have a strong immune system. I cannot, you know, make it clearer than that. And if you've got family members, show them this stuff and tell them. You're not going to basically, with your existing behavior and food, you're not going to get rid of these long C19 and long mRNA type, you know, health issues that you've got, where you're really in a very difficult spot. You're going to only resolve them by basically shifting to a species appropriate diet as much as possible. The more closer, the better, and getting, and even, you know, considering some level of supplementation of taurine and vitamin D. When it goes to people like that, because, you know, you can't really know what their retinol and menaquinone 4 levels are going to be, it's best to play it safe and stick to the 5,000 IUs. If people are more on a species appropriate diet, they're getting enough of the fat soluble vitamins and stuff like that, then 10,000 is fine for a number of months in sort of what I call the wintry months, and autumn and spring. Summer, you can depending on whether you're working indoors or whatever, quite a bit, you may have to you know, put a few IUs in, like even in summer when I'm working, I add 5,000 IUs. And whatever I get when I get outdoors, and I get more on the weekends, which I don't bother supplementing at all. So it depends. We live in a modern world with a modern lifestyle, which has a lot of different effects. So, you know, it's not like the work environment, and which was outdoorsy in the past. So we have to consider all these things. It would be nice to basically be able to eat a steak half naked out in the sun, but unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of reasons why you can't do that. And yes, you could end up indoors for quite some time if you did. Anyway, that's pretty much it, just to cover those points, and that really just to reiterate the importance of a species appropriate diet and good vitamin D levels for you and your family. Anyway, take care. See ya.